Greetings to Earth. Time for another video, and this is going to mark a small introduction to a theme for the next several videos actually, because I think I will describe it as the beginning of the long road to Ukraine. The long road to Ukraine. And the reason why I'm going to Ukraine, because I'm sure you're probably thinking, why is he going to Ukraine? It's not as obvious as you might imagine. Lots of people are going to Ukraine for very specific reasons, particularly these days. And I'm going for probably a unique reason. Don't get excited. It's actually fairly mundane for the average tourist, traveller, viewer, I'm sure. But for me, it's quite meaningful because when I was on a long trip visiting many countries a few years ago, I managed to accumulate a lot of gifts for friends. And these gifts ended up causing me to buy a new piece of luggage because basically I ended up with a volume of more gifts than my usual everyday backpacking items. Of course, when you're halfway around the world, trying to post things back to Europe can be expensive, can be very expensive. And there's also that underlying feeling of, will the items actually get delivered? This was a concern for me, of course. And so what I ended up doing was bringing the whole lot back. This great haul of items from northern, eastern, southeast Asian, Australasian and New Zealand treasures, really. These territories provided lots and lots of inexpensive gifts for me to select with particular friends in mind. Because I do like to give gifts, or at least I did. I'm not sure now after all this hassle whether I want to give gifts. Anyway, what happened was I brought this large suitcase of gifts back with me to Europe, and I landed right at the beginning of COVID. Literally middle of March, I landed in London and all hell had broken loose that day. So train was cancelled, trying to get from the airport to where I was going down on the south coast of England. It became a little bit problematic, not really disastrous, but just a little bit tricky. And the main thing was for everyone on March the 16th, I think, 2020. What's going to happen next? This has just begun. How serious is it going to get? And anyway, enough of the COVID issue. What I ended up doing was, once I realised it was going to be next to impossible to visit all the countries to personally hand my gifts to my friends, I started mailing the gifts and hoping that within Europe all the gifts would arrive. And for everyone except one of 3 gift bags I mailed to friends in Czech Republic disappeared. At what stage? Who knows? Because when you see these parcels, you realise, oh, hang on a minute, this has gone from small town in England to London or to Birmingham or God knows where else in England, and then it's gone to Norway, and then it's gone to Poland, or it's gone to Belgium, and then it's gone to Czech Republic. Trying to specifically track at what point the parcel disappeared was next to impossible. So just sadly had to think, damn it, that's disappointing. And I'm sure my friends were probably either disappointed or relieved because they weren't being sent more of my idea of tasteful gifts. Anywho, there were still some items, specifically the items for my friends in Ukraine, which I held on to because I didn't trust the post system, particularly after the Czech parcel went missing. And I thought to myself, well, okay, I'm going to the eastern side of Europe anyway next, as soon as COVID allows me to, and therefore I can deliver the gifts in person. So COVID allowed me kind of to reach Eastern Europe. Then I found myself pretty well stuck in one country. With the COVID restrictions, it became an issue for me because I didn't like the idea of somewhere along the line of countries being forced to stay in potentially an expensive hotel because the COVID rules had just suddenly changed, for example. And yeah, it felt uncomfortable, and therefore I decided to hunker down, I think is the expression. I hunkered down and actually got distracted into doing something entirely different I never imagined I would, which was writing a book, which turned into writing of several books, none of which are complete because they're all part of one huge story. And not only is the story not 100% clear in my mind, as you can imagine, when certain elements in one part of the book get revised, they have an impact on other things that perhaps I've already written and described and gone into detail over in other parts of the saga. Whether that will ever be finished in total, who knows? But anyway, that occupied my mind quite fully for months and months and months on end. Then I had some health issues. They've continued even after 21 months, I guess it was, since I first became aware of there being something wrong with my insides. It's something I've just got to try and manage, I guess, whether I'm traveling or it becomes so serious I can't travel. But we won't let that drag us down, will we? What you might hear is something that's not dragged me down either, but has just added to the burden of, oh God, this is the last thing I need. I managed to pick up a heavy head cold a while ago, beginning of the week. This is end of the week, and it's I think it's over the worst. Whether it's about to move down onto my chest, I don't know. I wish it would clear up, but you know, when you have these snotty head colds, they can linger for some time afterwards. But it doesn't stop me from getting up and out and about and doing things. Just have to make sure I'm well stocked with tissues. Now then, back to the issue of the long road to Ukraine. It's just started because I'm back on track, having dug my heels in for months on end and refused to risk mailing my gifts. I'm going there in person to deliver them to my friends. My friends have had to relocate from where they were living because they were actually living in Bucha, believe it or not. Of all the places they might have been living in, and God knows it could have been a more totally destroyed place in Ukraine. I mean, I'm thanking God that they weren't trapped in Mariupol, for example. But But there we are. They're in somewhere relatively safe within Ukraine because they're patriotic to their country, and they don't want to be driven from their home. Not entirely. They still hope to be able to get back and rebuild their lives in Bucha, a district of Kiev, in case anyone listening hasn't actually heard of Bucha, which would be a surprise, but there we go. So the long road to Ukraine begins, and first stop will be Riga. That's the first stop outside of Estonia, because as you may have noticed, almost all of my videos that I've posted so far have been from places in Estonia. Trouble is, I make too many videos, I think. Perhaps you would agree. Large in number, but low on quality. And so what I'm going to do now is take the first steps on that long road to Ukraine. Riga is the natural first step. Gauja National Park, Sigulda, that kind of destination. Then heading over towards Ventspils and down the Latvian west coast and into Lithuania, Poland, and eventually I'll get to Ukraine. And then, depending on what's going on there, we'll see how it turns out. Wish me luck.